Let's talk about the perks and pitfalls of being a light worker, or what it even means to be a light worker. I've talked about light worker and light workers and light work, meaning work that we do in the light, work that we dedicate to God or that comes from God. Because that's what light working is all about. There's a popular fad out there. It's kind of been going on for about 20 years, especially the last 20 years, but light workers, and it's getting kind of a buzz to it. It's a term that for all we know, it seems like it's a term that I created in the 80s, and then it kind of caught on and became its own thing. And I use the term because I think of us as connected to light and then doing our work. But that means as a poet, a healer, a mom, a surgeon. Light work means just the choice to bring the presence of God into anything you do. It's not like it's a prestigious group per se. It's a choice we make. So I always thought of it as light work. I used to, I had a newsletter. You guys are too young to remember this, but in the old days, we used to have newsletters. You had to mail them out, one stamp at a time, and I titled it something related to light work, and that's kind of where that term caught on or built up. And then a couple friends that I did conferences and spoke with, they liked the term, and then they wrote books with the term in it, and so on and so on. There's a website I would recommend, or a Facebook page, but get the right one, Universal Lightworkers. Okay, that's the one that's kind of branched off from what I started, Universal Lightworkers. Because the way I looked at it was universal. Angels, ascended masters, all beings that are committed to doing the work of God. To me, it's universal lightworkers. There's all kinds of others. There's like Lightworkers of South Sedona. Now there's all kinds of other little titled groups. I wouldn't deal with that right now. Just Universal Lightworkers is the one to check out. You can become a member, whatever there, and it's great. It's a great way to kind of learn more about it, but to keep informed of what kinds of things are going on. But light workers are people that are committed to doing the work of God, and some people are using the term without God being involved. And I'm thinking, well, that's kind of a drag, because I created a term and then it allowed it to kind of just be used freely, but people are using it without even its original meaning, which happens in this world quite often, like government. But it no longer governs well. So, it's light workers. If it doesn't have God, it's not light work, because God is the light we're talking about when I made up the word. Capital L, light work, God's work. So it's important for us to recognize that there are what we would call perks and pitfalls to doing light work. Now, you may not even think of the term, use the term light worker. And I'm not trying to start some sort of thing where we all use the term all the time for ourselves. You are a light worker when you're doing the work of God, if you're consciously choosing to do the work of God. I call it living the Christ life. It's another way a term I use for it. Living the Christ life. But there are some perks and pitfalls, and it's very important to understand that. Because, you would think, well, if I'm doing light work, then I'm good to go. Like, everything's going to just be peachy. But not necessarily. One of the simplest perks that come from doing light work, committed to anchoring the light of God in the world, I believe that it raises your happiness level. Because you think about love and forgiveness more often. It's hard to be a forgiving person, loving and forgiving person, and be bummed, all the time. But it can happen. I'll explain that in a moment. But this love and forgiveness stuff, I talked about it in videos recently, but this trip I just did overseas or whatever, but it was amazing. The people that I ran into, we're having all this love and peace and joy and celebration. We're like having these great meditation circles in our group. And you leave the room and you just run into somebody who's just not in the same mood. And it's a challenge because it makes you think, wait, even Buddha was asked this. You're Buddha. Why do people still throw rocks at you? And it happens. He explains these things happen. It's this world. And so we do these, Om. Oh, we're all feeling good. Oneness. We are the world. We're like, isn't this great? We're all just one and loving. And 2 feet away from that circle, you already have the first pain, in the butt kind of person. Somebody who's challenging. We had this one instance where we were having this great, deep conversation in the conference room at the hotel. And somebody knocks on the door, and long story short, I go to the door, and this lady standing there, she's a guest at the hotel and just thought we were too loud because we were the next room. We're a conference room, but she's in the room next door trying to sleep. So she says, "Parlez-vous français?" And I said, "No," and she proceeds to talk in French anyway. So I'm like, so she's talking, and I'm kind of getting the idea, universal translator, that she wants us to, be quiet. I said, "Okay, well, we'll stop the meeting. That's fine." And then, standing just, whatever, a few feet, 10 feet behind her husband's at the door, outside the door of their hotel room, standing there, he looks like Doc from Back to the Future, gray hair just in every direction. Naked except these bizarre Speedos that he had on. And I'm like, we were just meditating oneness with God, and I got this, so he's just standing there, angry as heck looking, and it's like, okay, so we finished. We closed the group. See them the next day, and they're just angry and looking at us, bitter. I'm like, wow, next day, the same thing. And some of the group members are, we could see them walk by, and they would go, they could tell it's them because of the look we'd get. So a couple days later, we're leaving, getting on the bus, and I see the two of them sitting with their bitter faces on the bench outside the hotel, and it's important to remember, it's called light work, not light sleep, light rest. It's, there's some effort involved. And I would love to say that you just pray and everything is always great. But when you're praying, you think that puts you always in the right space for things to go well. You forgot that sometimes you're praying to have the strength to handle the next moment. That's what you're doing a lot of times, forgetting that though. So we're doing this group stuff, and in that group, you're supposed to be building what you're going to need to handle the next moment, like filling your canteen at an oasis. There's still a desert to cross through, but fill up and get ready. So, I saw them sitting on the bench, and I thought, because the way my mind works is, what can I do? How can I be helpful? And I saw them sitting on the bench, and I just asked, what would you have me do to help heal whatever this is? And just because something's gone wrong doesn't mean you've done anything wrong consciously. It's not the point. There is a moment that could use some peace. And all you're asking is, what can I do? Forget who did it. Because really, whether they did it or you did it, your actions will be the same, which is to be loving somehow. So I looked over at them. What could I say? And if I said it in English, they wouldn't understand any. What could I say? Do I affirm Archangel Michael? Do I do some incantation? What am I going to do? And I went, au revoir. And they went, oh, au revoir. And they came to life. I brought peace to France and America all in one word. Now, I could have, could have just got on the bus from there. And I thought, the people on the bus are like, you got them to smile, wow. And I just had this feeling, because this is me. I'm like, I think I got one more. So I got off the bus, looked at them again, and I said, Vive la France! And then they were off the bench, all excited, and so. And that's just them. There were other instances of challenge, getting in line. People are getting in line. We had a delay of the flight for several hours, 12 hours, whatever it was, to get to the airport, and we took several hours to get it organized with the poor guy, the clerk behind the desk, and to juggle our group that's struggling to deal with standing on this hard stone ground for several hours, and yet to be nice and helpful and loving to the guy behind the counter and not cause him hurt, So just juggling that sort of thing. So that was beautiful. But then after we had to wait several hours to try again to get through, because the plane got delayed several hours, we're back in line, but there's 30 of us, something of us. And there's people in line going, oh, If they'd have gotten there 10 seconds earlier, they would be first in line. Now they're 31st. And they weren't happy, and a couple of them yelling and cussing, and there's a part of me that's, because this is what you do, like a daddy, a mommy kind. You sit there and you'd like your children to just feel peace and happiness. Then when you're leading a group, it's like that, and yet you got these people yelling at them. So it's an awkward and conflicted place to be, for me and for us in this world as light workers. You're trying to do this good work, and you got people still being mean. So I have thoughts, first, sorry, we're just in line, and don't worry, it'll be fine, and don't tell me, don't, and yell, cuss. And then you can feel it, the stress inside over this, and it's like, wow. And I had other thoughts that weren't as nice, but I did. I'm going to knock you out if you keep yelling at me. No. So, these other thoughts come. It's called the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. But do you see it happening in you? A Course in Miracles, everybody, overly sometimes embellishes how complex it seems to be. In a sense, it's simple, that thing called A Course in Miracles. It asks you to just watch yourself a bit more and see when you're off. It's not like read this and you'll be perfect. It's more like read this and you'll get better at noticing when you're off the perfection, forgiving yourself, and so on and so on. So you're going to have these thoughts, but are you catching on to them? So I'm watching the thoughts and all that, and very Buddhist-like concept too, of course. So at some point, I just thought, wow, this one guy yelling and and it was like, wow. So you walk away, because you do need to walk away sometimes. So the short version of this would simply be this: I stood in line because security line was also shut down, and we were all having to wait. He's about 15, 20 people behind us, and I'm watching. He's just aggravated. I mean, he's red. That's how angry he was. And I'm asking, what would you have me do? What would you have me do? Now, our group has sort of forgotten that. They're on their own conversations, but I'm not, because there's something that could be done today. You follow? Something that could be done. A miracle is waiting. It may not happen. You have to accept when they don't happen. But what you want to do is ask if you can help. You can't force it. You ask as a light worker, if there's going to be a change, can I help? And that allows, believe it or not, all these angels and Christ and the Holy Spirit, beings that you think are way out there, too high up for you, it gets their attention. Believe it or not, the highest of the holies will come into the moment and say, thank you for asking. I mean, it's the most incredible thing. And the only limits you'll run into will be in our consciousness, limiting beliefs. So all these beings, they're coming in saying, thank you for asking. Now what you have to do is manage the moment, because the head could get in the way easily. So I'm standing in line. Well, what do? I could try au revoir again, but he's not French. So you have to listen to the guidance in the moment. So I said to a couple people standing with me, I got to go throw something away, which I really didn't have to do, but I came up with something to throw away. But what I was really doing was creating a space to receive inspiration. Create a space. I call it sort of teasing it, testing the water a little. So I walked to the trash can, walked by the guy. He doesn't look at me. I throw something away. Now I'm walking back. Guys, you only have so many seconds between where you're standing at the trash can and that person and then your place in line. So between those 20 steps, let's say, between me and him, I have to, come up with something to say or do. You pray. What would you have me do? What would you have me do? I'm running out of time. I only got 10 steps left. Come on, quickly. Tell me what to do. That's kind of what happens. And then it's, okay, now do I walk in front of him? Do I walk to the side? All these thoughts. And I'm not trying to overthink it. What I'm doing is putting it out there. So asking questions can help do that. So I walked, and I saw all of a sudden he was standing close to another person who he was, nagging at about us. So do you want to walk into that fray? And I walk up and I take a quick one step to the right, which is right between them. It's like, well, why not? Let's go for it. So I just stepped in there. I said, hey there, sorry again for what happened. Sorry is a good way to enter a conversation when you want to create peace. If you want to say, I'm not sorry, I don't have to be, you did it, there's no peace. That's what A Course in Miracles means by, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? So I stepped in there and immediately he put his hand out and I shook his hand and then I hugged him and said, and he said, I'm really sorry. I understand what was happening. It's like someone educated him all of a sudden. So something happens. And it's not, one of the pitfalls of being a light worker is you start to think that you're better than everyone else. Well, I worked a miracle. There's not an I in this concept. It's a we. You can't create healing and forgiveness and love in an I, selfish consciousness. It involves thinking it as one with everyone else. And I got back to the line and a couple of the people like, you did not just hug that guy. What happened between, same with the French people and saying, it's on and on. It was the strangest thing. And this happened, half a dozen instances. But on that one, I'm going to say closing, on that one, it was interesting because when I walked out and hit the trash can, one of my thoughts was, am I asking too much to create 10 out of 10 miraculous healing moments? Because it can happen where some of them don't happen. You have to be open, right? But I said, is it possible? And I said, all right, I'm open, so I'm going to put it to you. I'm going to leave it to you, God, Christ, or whatever you'd like to use as a term. I'm going to leave it to you to prove to me that it can happen 10 out of 10 times. And when it doesn't, we need to be okay with it. But can it happen? Those were some of my last words before it happened. Being a light worker means being open and vulnerable. They could have said no. You got to be open. You got to be vulnerable. I stepped up to shake his hands. He could have said, get away from me. He could have reacted physically, Being a light worker, it's got great perks to it, mainly peace. It's being in a consciousness of miracle consciousness. It's like this miracle bubble. Here's another piece to this. The way the world works, the word slow is from the same root as low. Judgment brings us to a lower/slower state of consciousness. Denser. Time doesn't exist in heaven. There's the oneness, and then as we start to think we're separate, judging, third dimensional world. And then we're like, oh, I got an ache I can't fix. That doesn't exist in the high frequency of God. But in density, why is that ache taking so long to fix? Why is it taking so long for my finances to get better? Why is everything taking so long? Why is it taking so long for people to become more spiritual on this planet? Because of the density that comes from lower consciousness that creates slow vibrations. So we struggle with this, and miracle working speeds up the time. Of course, Miracles talks about that too, but miracle working actually puts you in a state of timelessness. In that moment, it's like time has ceased. It could have taken that guy or this guy a year, 10 years, 6 lifetimes to work through something as simple as, we don't have to be so upset all the time. Sorry about that. Oh, me too. It all happened in a second. One channeled word, au revoir, could change everything in seconds that humans would take years to work on. Because they're in a slower, lower consciousness. The lower consciousness creating a slower vibration. The slower vibration creating time. Density. Oh, everything's more limited. When you enter this miracle bubble, this moment of surrender to the light of God, I'm a light worker, I'm standing in the light frequency of God, time seems to speed up. How long it took to heal something speeds up to a fraction of what it would have taken. One of the pitfalls of being a light worker is when this happens to you where you learn faster, you achieve faster, you get clarity quicker, your issues pass away faster, people get annoyed with that. I've been working on that for 5 years. What do you mean you saw white light when you meditated? I've been meditating for years. I haven't seen anything yet. You closed your eyes once. You weren't even meditating, you were sneezing. And you, oh, I saw a white light. You know? And people will not like you for that because of their bitterness. Why do they have bitterness? Because they're in pain. Why are they in pain? Because they forgot. Like Buddha says, it's amnesia. They forgot who they are, they forgot who you are, so everything gets bogged in time. So, one time Helen, from A Course in Miracles, who wrote the book, channeled it. She said, Jesus, why am I always in such pain, physically, emotionally? She was in pain. Her life was generally okay, but inside, she didn't feel that way. And the analogy he gave her is brilliant because it applies to this moment, this conversation. He said, most people on the path, most people, in life, their growth, their consciousness, they're trying to get their life improved. It's like going up a really tall mountain and then coming down the other side. That's what most people are doing. It's hard, but it's kind of scenic at times too. Most importantly, it takes a lot more time to go climbing up to the top and over down the other side. He says, and I'm paraphrasing, when you're a light worker, when you get committed to the path, it's like burrowing through the mountain. A lot more work, and it's a metaphor of going inside yourself. It's a lot more work, a hell of a lot less scenic, and it's pretty dark and dismal inside sometimes. But you'll get through faster. So you get to choose. You can say, well, I like that analogy, but I'm still going to climb because I want to stay with the familiar and let it be gradual and slow. Maybe when I get up a little higher, I'll burrow through. Other people, that's still too early. I'm going to get up much higher up. I want to do less of the internal work. To each his own. Obviously, if a person starts off from the base camp and starts burrowing immediately, man, they're going to save lifetimes, as he puts in the Course. You're going to save thousands of years. You'll save lifetimes. But we're all wired differently. We all make different choices. We all have a different level of, and that's your commitment to God. A different level of commitment that says, not today, man. I'm burrowing. I'm going in. Be with me, God. I'm going in. And when I say you burrow in, you go through the mountain, it is hard work. It can be painful versus a stroll. You could even zigzag, take even longer your way up to the top of the mountain, those kinds of people. You burrow through, it's harder work, it's dark, but remember, I'm not recommending darkness. When you do your inner work, although it can be difficult, you're bringing the light of God with you. So it's like the old, there's stories about Mary Magdalene after the crucifixion of Jesus and so on, although there's varying stories that people are, coming up with about what happened after. Most of them are incorrect. But one thing, it's true that she lived in the south of France. Au revoir. It's funny how that came back into this. But she lived in the south of France. And she lived in these caves in the Pyrenees Mountains. And she lived in these caves and stayed away from people, but they would bring people to heal, she would do healing on people and so on. But in the legends about this, they said that she would be able to navigate these caves, which are the most, catacombs of just on and on, caves and caves, honeycomb rather, through here, like some of the greatest, lengthiest systems on the planet. But she would be able to navigate them without torch and so forth, so the legends say. Because there was a light she had inside her mind that would illuminate wherever she was in these caves. So whether that's true literal or whether it's metaphor, it's still perfect and important. We navigate our stuff. We got to go through the mountain, and in that space, it's going to happen. The darkness, the work, and so on. Take the light of God with you, and it will make the task easier, like her strolling through these honeycomb caves that nobody could go through without getting lost, so that in itself, it speaks volumes. Now, one of the pitfalls of light work, one of the perks, again, saving time. Now, you're not saving time just for yourself. Everybody you touch, everybody you help, just that moment, that person is going to think differently, whether it's the story of this guy or that gal, in my examples that I just gave. They have the right to now change their mind about life and say, I was really angry at those people, and and then they shook my hand and said sorry, and I feel healing. You see what I'm saying? It's like you could change a person's life. It may only change their conscious mind for a moment, but it's in the deep consciousness of them forever. So there's a lot of perks there. One of the pitfalls, though, of the light work, and it's kind of an interesting thing because you're doing light work, and when you're in that frequency, you're in a group, you're in a center like this, you're channeling light energy. Edgar Casey did light work, I'm doing light work, you guys do light work in your own way. When you're doing light work, you start to feel so good, you feel invincible. And it's a very interesting thing. John of God, man, this guy, when he drops in, these beings come into him, he's had times where he did surgeries on himself. He's just in such an altered state. He's cutting and suturing and, because he's in such an altered state. Edgar Casey, when they found out his gift to channel, the reason they found out is because he lost his voice. And a hypnotist was coming through town. In those days, the wandering hypnotist, it was like a sideshow. And coming through town, and he put Casey under. And his voice was fine. Take him out, and his voice was gone again. So they put him under and said, can you explain why the voice is gone? And he explained. And then it said, and you can also ask any questions, and this entity is capable of answering anything. They realized, wow, this is amazing. So his channeling told him how to cure his throat problem. And then now he began channeling for other people with health issues and eventually life issues. So Casey in the trance was fine, out of the trance, not fine. Meaning, when you're doing light work, there's a contrast between being in the zone, and it starts to increase the contrast when you're not in the zone. Not in the zone means anything other than that space of consciousness. No matter how, how I happen to feel at any given moment, when I come up to teach, it just locks and loads. It's kind of a cool thing. The difference, though, old school, even Edgar Casey, old school, you used to get away more with telling people how to be and not living it. The way the world is changing, one of the drastic ways the world is changing now is it's asking us to live it. So you don't just channel other beings, are you living what they're telling when they channel through you? And that's one thing that I somehow caught on to. And I got to say, it's not easy because it's not taught in high school. How to integrate the light or wisdom or whatever. So, one of the pitfalls, though, is you start to feel almost immortal, invincible. And, but then it increases the intensity of the contrast between when you're doing the work and then when you're just doing whatever else. So it's almost like stepping in the light when you're teaching, channeling, whatever you're doing, and then it will seem like greater darkness when you're not doing the channeling. Even though it's not darker than it was yesterday, it's going to seem darker each time because it's contrasted. This can affect your nervous system in ways you can't even imagine. Like from this peaceful thing to this erratic thing in your nervous system. The cure is don't allow a contrast. Center into the light of God, become the light of God, bring the light of God. And that becomes like an invincibility and so on. It's still going to take a toll. Stuff in this world still going to take, you're going to blow a fuse somewhere. But I realized that what has worked for me has been the good fortune, the luck of thinking to integrate instead of going, well, it's so nice to teach, be in one state of mind and teach, and then not act like it when I'm not teaching. They're fairly consistent, at least, for the most part, fairly consistent between the inner world and outer world. So one of the things to watch for is creating a consistency in your life. You have to integrate the light that you're doing light work with. You have to integrate it, start becoming it. But that gets weird because you start to, it's almost impossible to pull it off because you start getting so high on the light, you realize, oh wait, I haven't eaten for weeks. And it's strange. I mean, it's strange. But it happens because you're so in the light, you feel so great, you don't realize the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. So you won't rest as much because you don't feel like you need to. You have to actually learn to convince yourself to rest even when you don't need to. Because when you say, but I don't feel like I need to, who's speaking right now? Me, when I'm centered in this high frequency. Yes, but you'll forget because the brain's going to be programmed, I feel great, I don't need to rest. You come out of that space even slightly, doing a normal thing of driving to another town in this area, and your brain is still going, we feel great. But there's another part of us that's going, it's like, you need to lay down, man. You need to do something, eat, drink. I've described how sometimes get so dehydrated in this area for me. And people say, drink water. But I swear, I don't feel like I need it. But apparently I do. It's like that. It's that I'm describing something that's hard to describe. But if you're a light worker, you do need to know this. And a light worker, again, just anybody wanting to do the will of God in this planet. But you got to rest even when you don't know you need to. You've got to straighten your back when you lift something, even when you don't think you need to, because you feel great. I mean, we're gods and goddesses. Yeah, kind of. Part of us are gods and goddesses, developing, remembering, and awakening to that. And then there's another part that doesn't have wings yet. A part that still needs you to lift with your legs, not with your back, or drink more water, or whatever it happens to be. Edgar Cayce did his work, and it was just phenomenal. But there's one key word to watch for. It's called exhaustion. Underneath all of your labels of things. Oh, I heard I have a thyroid this, and I have a menopausal that, and I have this. Underneath all of them, they call it stress. Really. Everybody names things, but it's really the effects of stress. But what stress does is it exhausts you. You could actually be immune to stress. The reason when you can't be immune, it's when you've worn down too much. So even stress doesn't have power over you. Only our own exhaustion has power over us. And the immunity to that is balanced life. Eat things that feed you. Eat things that nourish you. Jesus dies on the cross. He says, I'm going to teach you. I really want to get this across to you. This world and your body and the world that it lives in are an illusion. I'm going to prove it. You kill me, I'm going to resurrect and say, I told you. This isn't real and it doesn't have power over you like you think it does. He did his version. All of us, especially light workers, I think, have times in our life when we feel that same calling to demonstrate this world doesn't have power over us. It could be the way you counsel people, telling them you don't have to let this get you down. That means you're saying to them, don't let this world take you, right? Okay, you're right. But Cayce did so many readings, even his readings said, stop doing so many readings, you got to rest. I don't feel like I need to rest. That's because you're doing a reading. You're in the zone. But he died. His body was so exhausted that it couldn't rid itself of fluids, and he drowned with pneumonia. He slowly drowned. You're thinking, well, how do you just do that? When your body is so tired. The first time, I've never had flus and things. I've never gotten sick. I've never had that like nausea, we throw up and all those kinds of things. Never gotten sick. But one time, I was on tour, and then touring again, and just the tours kept going. They didn't stop. There was no break. I don't feel like I need it, And I'm at one tour and another, and started, noticing a cough when I was like on my third city, third week in a row of a tour. And then, went to the next town, and now the cough, but I'm feeling kind of tired. I'm like, what is this? Now the cough is heavier, and I'm feeling more like this, like loopy, kind of weird. And I thought, something's going on. I worked and did that tour. Because I can sit up on a bed, do a workshop, talk, lecture, stand, and everything's animated. And then as soon as the lights go down, I just felt this. It's now the contrast is coming. You get what I'm saying? You've got to watch for those. So I'm feeling this like, whoa, what's that? So I arrive to the next city. My ride arrives and says, so you want me to take you out to get something to eat? You want to... And I go, no, something's wrong. First time I ever thought that said it. Something's not right. So I said, I need to get to the place where I'm staying. So we went there. Next day, I remember thinking, guys, it would be so cool if for some reason there was a lack of attendance at the event, because then I could go rest or something. And instead they go, Michael, great to see you. Good to see you too. And inside I'm like, and they go, we have the largest attendance we've ever had. I'm like, great, So, but what was happening is I had pneumonia. And the person that was my ride slipped that over to their partner, and the partner's like, he's got to go, to get it. I'm like, no, you've got to go. So I went with it. And we went and got it checked, and the guy said, you have severe pneumonia. And I'm like, just, wow, is that what this is? But the thing is, it's not the label, pneumonia. It's exhaustion. Watch in your own lives for the various things you'll name, because underneath it, I guarantee you'll likely be able to find where you're tired. Physically, energetically, or emotionally. There's something emotionally that has dragged me down and it's caused a physical illness, but it's because I've just been so sad about this, or drained about that, or frustrated with trying to fight this old relationship stuff. It exhausts you. Anytime you're not in remembrance of who you really are, it's exhausting. Because it's exhausting to try to be something you're not, which is unlike God. We are made in the image of God. To do anything else is exhausting. But this is what humans do. John of God, he's doing all this great work. He still had to have, he had a huge part of his stomach removed somewhat recently. But it's an amazing thing, because the people that were telling us about it, they said, he's in there, hospital, he doesn't even want to be there. They're like, well, even the entities coming through him, you need to go get this part removed. So he goes and gets this part of his, insides removed. And instead of laying and resting in bed, he just took his IV and walked out. Because it's a weird thing to feel so invincible. You go, I just recently, because I feel like it's no big deal, I fasted for 6 weeks, and it just was even as a kid, I never really thought that much about food. The foods I eat, I think, are great. I mean, you can't go wrong, chocolate chip cookies, but, and cold milk. I mean, that's just delicious. But I just don't feel that much of a call or whatever. But I also need to catch myself and say, eat differently anyway. Yeah, but I don't feel, shh, just eat better foods. Yeah, but shh, and rest. Why do I need to rest? I don't think you do. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. And we have to remember, when you rest and when you eat nourishing foods, you're actually demonstrating love for yourself. Not selfish love, care. It isn't the food really per se, it's the love of what the food symbolizes. Whether it's nutritious or, whatever. And the rest you need to take. Casey could have lived a lot longer. And it doesn't do us any good to destroy ourselves, accidentally or not. And if you're going to go, there's a nice way to go, to be of service to people. But you don't have to. So, as I'm coming to a close, just so important to remember, our destiny is not to be worn down. Our destiny is not to say, well, a mother's work is never done, or a father's work, those are old school things. You're a better parent by teaching your children balance than to show them exhaustion, victimization, martyrdom. So it's not easy to describe, not easy to explain, but please take an inventory. One thing, if nothing else from this talk, one thing is take an inventory of the different things you think you feel physically, emotionally, energetically. And then just experiment by asking yourself, if this could be exhaustion, How might that be so? Just experiment. And it's a weird feeling to do that. You drop in and go, God, I do push it. I do work more hours than, but I feel like I enjoy work. I know. Do you enjoy resting too? How about dying? Is that a good one for you? Just, it's okay to rest. And it really is nice. Sometimes I get tears in my eyes when I rest. It's the weirdest thing. There's been a part of me that says, you don't deserve to rest, or whatever other bizarre subconscious program could be there. That at times when I've laid down to let go, tears of relief can come to my eyes, and sometimes deep processes can happen just by resting. It's such a cool thing. Lay on a massage table. I'm not there just to massage. I look at it and think, I'm going to let go. Because it's so amazing to be in the hands of someone who cares. And that's self-nurturance. And everybody's got to learn that. Do your light work. You are immortal. You are invincible. But that part is not completely remembered yet. So take your Flintstones vitamins and drink your water. Your one-a-day vitamins, and drink your water. I call it know the truth but respect the illusion. There's a higher frequency that you're getting when you meditate. There's a higher frequency when you do light work. There's no doubt about that at all. And you are contributing to the statement of, this world does not have power over me. That's good. But don't forget, part of us still believes that it does. So you just have to play the game a little bit, and for a little bit longer. It's not always easy, but you just have to do that. Is this all making sense? All right. I'm going to ask you to take a few centering breaths. Just setting aside all the stuff of the world. When we do that, we go into a quiet center where we are immortal and immune. When we center into this center called God, this altar called God, it can often make us feel great and inspired. And you go and paint for days without sleep. Counter it. Sometimes make yourself sleep anyway. But I'll forget. I was in the zone. I'll forget what I was inspired to do. Then make a few notes and then rest. Make yourself rest even when you don't think you need to. It's called balance. But enjoy and soak in the high moments too. Because it's who we really are, and it's the life we're all shifting into. Now let's start with just viewing a few things in our lives that maybe are consistent patterns. Physical ailments, emotional struggles, patterns, whatever they may be. Just look, find a few. It's all right that they're quite different from one another. One's a physical thing, one's a psychological thing. Whatever it happens to be, just view a few areas of life that are a struggle. In this moment, what seems to be separate things, Father, Mother, God, I ask you to help me weave them together into a common theme. In what way could these things that I'm struggling with be symptoms of exhaustion? Be hypothetical, be open-minded, just be spontaneous. In what ways might these things be related to exhaustion? Could be emotional exhaustion, physical exhaustion. In what ways? What kinds of things in my life, what kinds of events contributed to my feeling exhaustion? Unhealed wounds, something lasting too long, wearing me. Be honest and let that come to mind. And then just hear these words. I became tired because I forgot who I was. I forgot who I am. I became tired because I thought something should be one way and it wasn't. Because I wanted something to happen that didn't. The exhaustions come from dual thinking, dualistic thinking. Just look at it and own it. In the light of God, this does not exist. There is no pain in the light of God. There's no exhaustion. There's guidance on healthy, balanced living. Casey was guided to not work so much. But he didn't choose to listen well enough. We were all guided before we became exhausted. We were all guided on how to live, the cure to that. And we didn't listen. So now, how can I remain in the light of God and take care in a way that is loving and self-caring and balanced? And stay out of excuses, but I can't, I'm needed, I will lose my job if, forget all that. Just do the work. Center in the light of God. See yourself as a God goddess. See yourself radiating with this beautiful light. And then ask, on a practical level, what would this look like in day-to-day life? In a way that wouldn't exhaust you. How could be centered in God, being centered in God, create a life that doesn't exhaust me? And just take half a minute to a minute viewing this. Make a commitment to practicing this in your day-to-day life. We integrate the light. We don't channel it or talk about it. We integrate it. Which can still be channeling and talking, but we integrate it into ourselves and we live it. And it will always guide us into self-care and balanced living. It guides us to end relationships if it's going to exhaust us to keep trying to fight to keep them alive. It'll guide us sometimes to say no as well as to say yes. Herein lies the peace of God. The real part of me cannot become exhausted. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. So the human part of me that becomes frail and tired I will change what I can and bring it back to life, and I will accept what I can't and let it lie down and rest now and then. And so it is. Slowly reacclimate to the room. Yeah, I pray that today's made good sense. And, there's different components of what I'm talking about. Lightworkers, what Lightworkers are. The pitfalls, even just a little bit of an analogy of burrowing through a mountain. It saves time, but it's harder work. Things like that. Each can stand alone. But also the call to look at these examples of light workers on this planet. This world's still going to have its day. You could be a light worker and so on and so on. And this world, you're still going to blow a fuse somewhere because you're in a body that has fuses. Yogananda was one of the best, one of the greatest, light workers on earth. He still got, as he got older, he still lost some hair. He still got a little bit gray. And he gained like 50 pounds. And yet, after he died, his body did not decompose. And you think, well, why didn't he put some of that non-decomposing energy into weight loss? Because he didn't need to. He didn't care. And you shouldn't. You should. These things shouldn't matter. Peace first, and then whatever else. But I admire the kind of light this person had, and but you just be careful when you push it. I can simply say, I like when sometimes when it's time to go, okay, fine. It's kind of fun to have all this immunity consciousness and this power, this strength, and to go, all right, fine, and take care of something practical. One of the great immunity moments for me, I was a couple years ago, I was outside spraying some weeds here, and there's a granola that drove by. And a granola, there's just like everything's got to be really pure all the time and organic. So this person drives by and they stop. I don't even know them. And they stop. Is that organic material you're using? Oh, yes. Yes, of course. And she looked like yeah, I doubt it. Are you sure? And I went, yeah. And I took the tip of the nozzle that all this wonderful weed killer radioactive stuff is on. I took it off. I popped it in my mouth. Took it out. I see it's organic. She's like, oh, okay. She drives off. I'm like, tuh. I mean, not because I was afraid of the toxins. It just tasted terrible. It wasn't like whipped cream or something, But that said, one time on a flight, my ex was with me and some others, and I said, man, a long flight. I'd love to take something to go to sleep. Now, she had a lot of difficult childhood stuff, and so she used to take these rhino tranquilizers to sleep. That's what she needed because of her stuff. And she doesn't tell me that. She just says, oh, here's something. So in one respect, I'm not responding to things in this world. And, this nozzle I throw in my mouth, it's like, big deal. But I took this tranquilizer, this sleeping pill, and I'm not kidding. After a few moments, first I noticed my stomach felt a little weird, but all of a sudden I couldn't move. Now, I'm not kidding. This happened. Quick story, quick version, but I swear. I couldn't move, and I was like, hey. And I couldn't get anything, and everybody else is sleeping, and I'm like, and I'm not kidding. I thought, I need something from my backpack, from my stomach, because it's feeling weird about what I put in. So I'm like, and I thought, okay, how do I get down to my backpack, because I can't move? I thought, just relax. And I did. I just crashed into the seat back in front of me. I just let myself fall into that. So I'm like, okay, now just let the arms fall. Now that they're down there, see if you can grab one of the zippers. I swear, man, I was paralyzed. I unzipped this thing and then just, and then I would, and then I'd wake up from 10 minutes and there's a piece of food, try to bring it up towards the mouth. I swear it was the weirdest thing. I was just gone. And I couldn't move, and I just had to do this little fall asleep and then wake up just paralyzed. And this went on and on. So as much as we can seem invincible to things, one thing demonstrates to me, you're in a body, dude. So it was so bizarre. And the strangest thing of all, I told her later, oh, yeah, that's true. Those are like rhino tranquilizers. I'm like, man, what were you thinking? But stranger still, years later, we're doing another flight. I said, man, I'd like to get something to sleep. She goes, I have something. She didn't even remember that this happened. I went, wait a minute. I'm having deja vu, man. Or maybe this wasn't an accident. She was in my will, after all. Anyway, thank you guys for being with us.